We all know about the Orichalcos, and we know about Dark's evil plan to take over the world. But what if I told you the story runs deeper than you can possibly imagine? What do you really know about this stone? A kryptonite looking rock which single-handedly toppled civilizations. Well, when I tell you the truth about the stone, you'll be shocked because there's a few misconceptions when it comes to the Orichalcos. The Orichalcos on Wikipedia is described as a meteorite. A meteorite is a rock which has fallen to Earth from outer space, making it sound like a foreign entity which had fallen to Earth. But what if I tell you this narrative has always been false? The Orichalcos was never a foreign space rock. Back in the days of Atlantis, a volcano erupted, a disastrous explosion. However, deep within the volcano came spewing out fragments of the Orichalcos. Now the crazy part is, the supposed space rock is actually the complete opposite. It has been a part of this Earth from the very conception, which would make it as old as the very Earth itself. Now the stone has the ability to grant the user great power. We see the very first years of the effect the Orichalcos had on Atlantis. The Atlanteans advanced their society to a point where we see flying cars roaming around the cities, which has always been a symbol of advanced civilizations. This was 10,000 years in the past, and technology like this still didn't exist, which just goes to show the power of the Orichalcos. Now this paradise didn't last, as the Orichalcos drew out people's inner greed and rage. However, all the blame can't be placed on the stone. This stone is just a tool created by a greater being known as the Great Leviathan, aka the Orichalcos God. So when I say the Orichalcos feeds on your inner greed, it's actually relaying it back to the Orichalcos God. So this opens up the question, was the Great Leviathan locked away inside the Earth from the very beginning of time? And if it was the Earth created as a prison for the Great Leviathan? Who had the power to lock the Great Leviathan away in the first place? The Leviathan, a sea monster which actually has a lot of religious connotations. It is prophesied in many different religions and comes across in a variety of forms. In Isaiah chapter 27 verse 1, it states, "In that day the Lord with his severe sword, great and strong, will punish the Leviathan, the fleeing serpent, Leviathan, the twisted serpent, and he will slay the reptile that is in the sea." In this text, it describes the Leviathan as a fleeing serpent, potentially running away from God and his divine punishment. Now this makes sense in terms of what we already know about the Orichalcos God, that it's possible the Great Leviathan found refuge hiding from God on Earth, burying itself in the depths, releasing the Orichalcos stones as a catalyst to speed up the process of leading humanity towards evil. The Orichalcos God was biding its time, feeding on the inhabitants of Earth, their anger, their greed, growing big enough to one day be strong enough to eventually face God in combat. You see, the tale of the Great Leviathan, the day of reckoning, is also prophesied no matter what story you go with, which indicates a future battle with God and the Great Leviathan. Now whether it's Norse mythology to the Old Testament, that day seems inevitable.
I am inevitable.
The Great Leviathan in Norse mythology is famously known as Jormungandr, the world serpent which was banished to Earth, where it grew as big and long as the Earth itself. Similarly to this, the tale of the world serpent was prophesied to be the one who killed the god Thor. Now we see the inspiration from these legends take place in Yugioh. When Darts first releases the Great Leviathan in the flashback, the creature was fairly big. However, was nothing in comparison to the size of the creature when he was summoned near the end of season 4. This just shows that in the 10,000 years, the Great Leviathan has been feeding on humanity's evil and sin in order to take its true form. And when the fated day appears in Yugioh, where the Leviathan and the gods meet in battle, we see the gods of Egypt, which are the creatures that represent God in that storyline, being dwarfed by the sheer size of the Great Leviathan. Now we know about the fated battle between God and the Leviathan. However, we can't ignore the similarities between the Leviathan and the devil. I believe the Leviathan in Yugioh is actually symbolic for the devil, And if that's the case, we can't ignore the devil's fated rise to power. There were a lot of key components which had to be put in place before that happened. One of them being the false prophet. Who is the false prophet, you ask? Well, the false prophet is said to be a figure who will rise on earth, who will speak on behalf of God, however in reality speaks for the devil, manipulating the mind of the masses and straying them away from God, and actually leading them down a different path completely. Now who does this sound like in Yugioh? That's right, it's an accurate depiction of the character called Darts. Darts is a character who collects souls to power the demon living in the depths of earth. According to the book of Revelation, we were warned about a false prophet roaming the world, who I believe to be Darts, a wolf in sheep's clothing.
That he is a wolf in sheep's clothing. He's different on the outside than he is on the inside. On the outside he looks harmless, he looks caring, he's charismatic, he's likable, he's sensitive, but on the inside, the scripture says, he's got a voice like a dragon. Remember who the dragon is in the book of Revelation? None other than Satan himself.
The figure appears at the end of the world, which is exactly when Darts revealed himself, spending 10,000 years in the shadows of humanity and revealing himself at the end of times. Now the signs between Darts and the false prophet from the Old Testament are too great to be a coincidence. The main thing the false prophet is said to perform is exactly what Darts is guilty of, which is straying people from their path and joining the new religion or cult. This is exactly how Darts acquires new members, by manipulating and brainwashing them to join the way of the seal of Orichalcos. If this isn't proof enough, just look at where Darts was originally from, the city of Atlantis, which actually represented the city of Babylon. The city of Babylon is referenced in the Bible as being a place of evil, which fell to corruption and greed as they turned away from God, which is exactly what happened in the city of Atlantis as the Orichalcos revealed the greed inside of the people. And this isn't the only sign, just look at the seal of Orichalcos. It looks exactly like the pentagram of Satan, the same symbol which resembles the rituals people associate with contacting the devil or summoning spirits. This can't be a coincidence. Now Darts didn't do this alone. He had help from Valen, Raphael, Mai, and Alistair, which I believe were the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. The entire season, when looked deep enough, is heavily inspired by religion. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are 4 biblical characters who appear in the book of Revelation. They are a symbol of the upcoming apocalypse. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are often represented as figures draped in black, and I believe this was also represented in the Waking of the Dragon's arc as the minions of Darts. They appeared before the upcoming disaster which was about to destroy the entire earth via the Great Leviathan. The 4 horsemen each represented a unique aspect of chaos. Conquest, represented by Mai Valentine. The Horseman of Conquest is power hungry and said to arrive and sweep across the world, unleashing civil war and internal strife. This I believe was represented by Mai leaving her previous friends and joining Darts' side, leaving Joey with an impossible decision, having to face someone he once called a friend. Mai has always been a character which felt like she wasn't good enough and craved power in order to get the same recognition as Joey and Yugi.
I just want to be the best.
What you want is true power.
True power?
The Horseman of War, represented by Valen. The Horseman of War is said to be continuously seeking out chaos and destruction, and physically the most powerful of the 4 horsemen. Valen similarly spent his entire childhood getting into fights. His backstory is full of fights Valen participated in due to his rough childhood. The Horseman of Famine, represented by Raphael. The Horseman for Famine represents the scarcity of food and seeks to deal justice to those whose major sin is gluttony. Raphael, who was separated from his rich family as a child, went from a wealthy family and drifted onto an island. All his childhood he was alone, with no food apart from the scraps he fished and found on the island. Raphael has a strong sense of justice, just like when he believed the pharaoh to be evil. And the final horseman of death, represented by Alistair. The horseman of death doesn't seek power and has one purpose. Alistair grew up knowing only death, losing his brother Mikey at an early age, as well as losing everyone he cared about or loved growing up. So what do you guys think? Is the Orichalcos story based on religion, or is it one big coincidence?